David, appreciate you being here. I know it was a commute.
Well, I am glad we made it. Got in late last night.
So you were at the Stevens Conference yesterday. What was the general mood?
It was a great day, but I would tell you, I mean, we started at 8 o'clock and finished our last meeting at 6 o'clock last night, and I would say the mood was pessimistic still. The vast majority of the carriers have not seen. They feel like they're still on the bottom. And I think it's kind of the same place we've been at for 2 years. It's just struggling on the bottom. It's not gotten a lot worse, but we've just kind of been in this same spot for a couple of years. And so you sense that. Now, the investors on Wall Street, they are sitting there reading FreightWaves and reading, your data, and they are starting to get optimistic. They are feeling like that in the next few months things are going to turn around and get better for us.
Now, what would you describe this year? You were bullish on I think it was the second quarter conference call.
Yes.
You were arguably, I think I've said this, and you were the most bullish CEO of the public carriers. Is that specific to Covenant's business model, or is that more of the market conditions?
I think it's both. I really do. I think I would say it's 60% our model, 40% the market conditions. Freight is not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad, and we're just sitting there. So, I'd rather have it like that than severe ups and downs in the market. So that's a positive. But at the same time, what we've done for the last 5 years in our model is really showing up today. And so that is an absolute blessing.
David, your business, if you sort of look at the evolution of the company, started in 1985, was one of the leaders and still remains a leader in the long haul, particularly expedite industry. But largely in that over-the-road business, that's really where you got started.
Yeah.
You guys, for 2 decades, were one of the best performers.
Yeah.
Something happened in the mid-2000s that really changed the entire industry, that impacted Covenant and a lot of the long-haul carriers. What was that?
Yeah, you're exactly correct. I mean, we started off as an expedited carrier, running team drivers predominantly to the West Coast, and that was our heritage, and still 1/3 of our business today. So it's still a major part of our business. But the thing that you had, and it was there all the time, but being a public company, everybody sees it. It was there since 1986, since we started the company, and that is the cost structure of strictly a team expedited is much greater than a solo operation. And what would happen is that when things were good, when the economy was good, when peak season was good, end of the month of every month would be good. It was like you were running a third shift manufacturing. I mean, you are just pumping because those miles are 24 hours a day that those trucks are running. You're generating a lot of miles. But anything that stops that, and that can be freight, it can be a worsening economy, it can be the weather, January, February. It can be all of a sudden, instead of running 7 days a week and 24 hours, I'm running 5 days a week and I'm running 18 hours a day. Because the infrastructure of expedited team, just think about it, to run 250,000 miles a year on a truck, do I have more mechanics? I do. Do I have more payroll clerks? I do. Do I have more safety people? I do. I've got an infrastructure that is greater to handle those miles. So when the miles stop, I still have the infrastructure. And so that's why we would have earnings that were like this. So the 2000s was just accumulation of continuing to operate in that environment. Then 08, 09 happened for all of us, but we actually played in that environment until really it started in 2015, 2018 is when we started turning the company and saying, it can be part of us, it's not going to be who we are. And, we went to the board, I went to the board in 2015, and I said, we're going to do something different. I'm not sure what this means, but we're going to get deeper in the supply chain. And I'll find out what that means. But I'm going to do something different. We're going to change our company because I'm tired of the earnings being so volatile. And so we started down a track, and we were very fortunate that Delta Airlines came to us, and Delta wanted the teams because Delta wanted us to do tires and brakes for the airplanes. All that's based in Atlanta, and they distribute it out of Atlanta. And what they were looking at is, okay, I want you in LaGuardia, their major hubs. I want you in LaGuardia next day, Detroit next day, Minneapolis next day. You know, those kind of things, which are very easy to accomplish with a team driver. But the thing that had to be established also with Delta was that they want us to go to every airport in the United States, wherever they were. So we had to go to Chattanooga. We had to go to Charleston. We had to go anywhere where it wasn't LaGuardia, where they had the volume. And so we had to set up a national network with cartage companies that would redeliver the freight to all the airports. So that was our first taste of doing something besides getting into a truck and driving it to California. And then in 2018, we purchased Land Air, which we still run Land Air today as a separate entity. But Land Air got us into the true dedicated that has 2, 3, 4-year contracts, a lot of fixed variable contracts on cost. And it showed us how a dedicated is really supposed to be run. It also allowed us to get into warehousing. Since then, since the 2018 acquisition, we have quadrupled the dedicated side that Land Air brought to the table, and we've doubled the warehouse space. And so we're up to about 5 million square feet of warehouse space there. Then, I will tell you, is that in 2020, March 16th, 2020, that we're all very familiar with. So what happens, the world's coming to an end. Every industry in the world is shutting down because of the virus. And we were in the Solo refrigerated company, owned a company, SRT, out in Arkansas. And it just struggled. It was up and down. I mean, I would personally take that company over, and we'd get it down to a 92, and then next year would be a 98. We would work hard. We'd get it to a 90. The next year would be a 98. And it was just so inconsistent. There are some great refrigerated companies. I'm not one of them. And so we made the decision March 16th. I walked in and said, it's over. Because we were fortunate that the government, if y'all remember, they were offering a $300 bonus for unemployment during the virus. Mm-hmm. It made about 70% of my employees were going to make more money than what I was paying them with a $300 bonus. And so I said, if we're ever going to do it. So we shut the company completely down. I told the team, we were running 800 trucks in this segment. We took about $100 million charge in the second quarter, but exited the OTR. That got us virtually out of the OTR business. Then in 2022, we purchased a local company, AAT, that got us in the Department of Defense, hauling bombs and bullets. And AAT is still here in Chattanooga, still separate. We've been able to double the size of that company, and they do great. And then in 23, we purchased Lou Thompson, got us in the poultry business. I know more about chickens today than anybody in this room. I mean, it is just an unbelievable piece of business. And we may be the only carrier in the United States that added 300 trucks last year. I don't know of anybody. Most people are downsizing, and we were able to add it because of the growth of our poultry. And the thing that I love about that segment is that 90% of it is in one state, Arkansas. The number one state in the country for poultry is Georgia. We haven't even got to Georgia yet, so I see great growth there. So anyway, Craig, that is what we have done to reshape our company. So it's the reason why I'm so proud of what the team has done. They've done a great job.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable because the transformation, and Wall Street has rewarded you for it. I mean,
Yes.
Your stock was, what, $1.30 in 2009?
2009 is funny because Joey Hogan sent me an email. Joey used to be my president for 27 years or so. He's with me. But he sent an email to us, and he does it every year. But November the 19th, our stock was $1.36, 2009.
Wow.
And whatever, 57, 58, it hit $61, a week ago. So it's been a tremendous turnaround, a tremendous blessing. That said, I would say that OTR I think we got 80 trucks running in the OTR segment. So it's just not a lot.
How hard was it? I mean, you talked about the refrigerated market running, exiting that market, but the legacy business, while you had expedite, you still had some OTR exposure. I mean, it was sort of core to long-haul trucking.
Yes, yeah.
How hard was it to what did it take to realize that business was not something that you were going to be rewarded for?
Well, what we did in 2020, at the same time that we exited the solo refrigerated segment, because you can say that expedited is also OTR. It's also OTR, but we have the largest fleet of team drivers in the United States. So we're the largest there is with team drivers. So even though it's quote OTR, it's also specialized because of two people to a truck, and we all know about truck drivers and the difficulty of the truck driving industry that we have. And so it does set itself apart. Another thing that we've done on the expedited side, in 2020, when spot rates, as you're very familiar with, went up to about $4.50 a mile, we went to our customer base and we said, if you would like to, you can't get trucks. And they were calling us, I need trucks, I need trucks, I need trucks. We went to them and said, let's make an agreement. How many trucks a week do you want? 50, 100, 20, it was, all those kind of numbers. And we said, let's do this. Let's make a long-term agreement, a long-term contract. I'm not going to charge you $4.50 a mile. Let's say I charged them $2 a mile. We will charge you $2 a mile, and we will be here for your 50 or 100 loads a week. And we absolutely lived up to that. We left $4.50 on the table. We just did not do it. And we committed to those customers. And let me tell you, in the last 2 years, they committed to us. It's been unbelievable. So we got long-term contracts on 50% of the expedited business. And I haven't raised rates in 2 years, so it's not like they gave me rate increases, but they gave me the business.
I mean, right now, keeping stable rates is a rate increase.
That is a rate increase, absolutely.
As everything else deflates. David, how many teams do you currently have?
About 900.
900, and you're still the largest team operation, which, and go back 15 years ago, you guys had
1,700.
1,700, was that the highest number?
Yeah, about 1,700. And in 2020, when we were doing all the changing, and because when we walked in March 16th, none of us in this room knew if this virus is this shutting down, is it 1 day or 3 years? So if you were making it, we were having trucks coming in all over the United States parking up against the fence. We had every plant shutting down. It's like, how long is this going to last? I still got payments on these trucks. How long is this thing going to last? And so we literally got with our customer base at that time. I think we were running about 1,200 teams, and we said, do you really need team drivers? Answer the question, Mr. Customer. If you do, I'll keep them. If you don't, I'm getting rid of them. So it was about 900 sweet spot that said, we need this. So we exited the rest of them.
And everything's contracted?
Yeah, half of it.
Or half of the team business. And the other half is incremental on demand.
It's just in the market doing whatever it does.
Is that a business you're going to grow, or are you guys looking to diversify more into the supply chain business and these sort of specialized?
Yeah, no, I think that we've found our sweet spot. I think that there it is. Just continue to shape it, continue to make sure that it's operating as well as it can possibly operate. Because I've been there at 1,200 and 1,700, and I had to go make the market. I had to say, I got teams. You really got solo freight, but I'm going to put a team on it anyway. Well, that's not the answer, because you're not going to get the money that you need to get.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is. So I do think that's it. And so now the way in which our company is today is that 1/3 of our business is, 30% of our business is expedited, 30% of it is dedicated, 30% of it is our managed freight TMS, and then 10% of it is warehousing. Those are the 4 verticals. And so when we do an acquisition like Chattanooga AAT, it went right straight into our expedited because it's team requirement, hauling the bombs and the bullets. When we did Lou Thompson, it was all dedicated, so it went into our dedicated. So that's what we look at. We're doing. We will look at acquisitions. We're growing again internally. Again, just the chickens, because there ain't a whole lot of growth going on in this industry. So don't act like I'm growing dramatically. But I look at this. We're down from 4,000 trucks, our high in the early twos. 03, 04, 4,000 trucks. Today we're running 2,500 trucks. Back then we were doing $700 million in revenue. Today we're doing almost $1.1 billion.
And more importantly, your stock price is up 30 times, which is a pretty insane.
Something's going well. So we're blessed, and we're working our bottoms off.
I mean, that's got to be a rewarding thing for you and the team, just to see how, like, you've been public since, 94? And so it's been a long journey.
It's been a long journey. We went to New York Stock Exchange. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah. I actually saw. I was watching CNBC and I saw the covenant.
Oh, that's great. That was great.
You guys
30
ringing
years.
the bell.
Yeah, we rang the bell.
Yeah,
that's great. We celebrated 30 years of being public.
Yeah. How was first half was a little bit different than the way it feels right now.
That's right. Yeah, it's been a journey. As we all know, I'd rather be public than private because of your balance sheet. I mean, it does a lot of great things to the balance sheet. And, even during the times that we were losing money and our stocks at $1.36 a share, our balance sheet still had about $200 million of equity in it. And so even though the banks were freezing, so we had bank issues, so don't get me wrong, but the being public allowed us to weather those storms. Because at $1.36, they're saying you are going broke. Yeah. And in 39 years, I've been broke 2 times, and we just didn't shut the doors. Yeah. And we just kept piling away like a lot of us truckers end up doing, and we just keep going at it. But so that was one side of that, and then the other side has been the last really 5 or 6 years when the things started turning around and our model started working.
There was a conversation yesterday that you were in Nashville with the Business Wars podcast host, and he goes through all these stories about businesses that sort of rise and fall and then rise again. And he said the one thing that separates the successful ones versus the unsuccessful ones is the fact that the founder just doesn't give up.
Yeah.
And was there ever a moment in those sort of dark times in the mid-2000s that you were it felt like you were starting to question?
Yeah, you do. I mean, when you're sitting there, I'll never forget, September 2008. Some of you may remember this, and that is George Bush gets on the television and says the financial industry is cratering. Mm-hmm. They were literally worried about minding your checks being able to be cashed on Friday because the banking industry was collapsing. Yeah. At that day, we were renewing during the course of that month, and we were losing at this time, guys. I mean, we lost $100 million. We didn't lose 2. I mean, if we're going to do it, we did it right. We lost.
Went all in on
we
that.
Went all in. we were losing $100 million during that time frame, and I'll never forget. Bank of America called and said, "Quit negotiating a $300 million credit facility between them and Daimler. Quit negotiating. Sign it right now because tomorrow may be too late." Mm-hmm. And we signed that sucker. So there's times that, I can only tell you, as you know, Craig, the most important thing in my life is my relationship with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I'm a guy that works 70, 80 hours a week. Thank the Lord, I'm working on the second generation, and now I'm working 50 hours a week. And they're doing great. I love my team. But for a guy that says, I work 60 hours a week, the most important thing is my relationship with Jesus. And that's been there when I started the company. And so to answer your question of, have I ever doubted? Yeah, you do. But I believe God created me for this, what I do. I believe as much as a minister is out there preaching the gospel, I'm supposed to be doing this. Mm-hmm. I've had this love since I was 13, 14, 15.
You have diesel in your blood.
You do too.
Yeah,
we all do. It gets in it. Yeah, some way or another, you're satisfying it. You're doing it by leading FreightWaves and telling us we're going to get out of freight recession. So,
that's right.
That's right. So it is. So yes, you doubt it. It's easy being Monday morning quarterback. And as a public company, let me tell you, I have been the most brilliant trucker in the world, and I've been the stupidest trucker in the world. I've had Wall Street say 2009, 2008, and I can name you 2 or 3 more dates that, now, I never forget, being in a meeting in Chicago, walking to investors, there's 5 or 6 in there, shareholders, and we're going through a presentation, and they said, I got one question. How do you keep your job? I said, my answer at that time was pretty good. I said, it might be because I'm the largest shareholder. So that worked for me. But, you know, it's easy being Monday morning quarterback, especially when your earnings, losing $100 million, lost, you know, you didn't meet this, you didn't do that, your expectations were blah, 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 and we didn't hit the Wall Street numbers. And then you get on Monday morning, get in Chattanooga Free Press, and we're making, or you get Transport Topics, and we got it, and we got to read. Let me tell you, here's what I tell you. 95% of my pride is gone because during those times, you become very humble. Yeah. And that is.
Do you remember those folks that doubted you way back when? Do you have a long memory in that, or
no? I don't. You gotta, you know, there were nobody says things viciously, but as we all know, sometimes we're our worst enemy. Sometimes we love to sit here and say, I'm going to tell you, I think Celadon's getting ready to go broke, and I guess it'll be next week. And we look for that day it's like we're hoping. Yeah. It's like we're hoping. Why? Because of competition, right? Sure. You know, another one, it's like so if you're not careful, you can develop feelings that are not there. And I attempt to live my life running to those people, encouraging and helping and assisting in any way we can versus being the one that's saying, please get out of here.
So David, the business has a new direction. You've talked about the fact that you're moving towards a new type of business model. Do you think the over-the-road for-hire market is forever changed, or do you think that something will pivot in that business model to make it more attractive where you should double down?
Something has to change. I have zero desire to ever be much more into the OTR than what I am today. Because it is when I'm sitting there saying I'm feeling pretty good about the world and business is not horrible, but if you're strictly in the OTR business, it's horrible. It is, I mean, it's been a horrible 2 years. Mine has just been bad. Mm-hmm. They have been in a horrible situation for 2 years. And we have a $250 million brokerage. So, you know, I'm talking to myself, but the brokerage has almost became the OTR.
Yeah.
They are almost it. And so when you got tremendous companies, from public companies to great private companies, that are having to deal on the brokerage side of the issue, it's more difficult. And again, I'm one of those. But if the market is telling me we are going to give a percentage of ours to the brokerage, and because we want to go up with the ups and downs, then I'm going to be part of that.
And that's completely, I mean, that's shifted in the last 15 years.
Oh, yes. And now I think it's starting to shift again. You know, our philosophy on the brokerage, I mean, let's say that our brokerage this year may be down $25 million. I'm fine with that. We are still operating at a 95 OR, 94, 96 ORs in that business. I have no desire to say, how quick can I get to $1 billion? Yeah, I can get there with 105 OR. Well, that ain't the answer.
It is interesting when I look at going back 20, 30 years ago and how it was an old statement, he who has the most toys win. I remember growing up, it was who had the number of trucks. Everybody talked about what order of trucks we're at. And what I think is really interesting is those conversations among public, now maybe the small guys that are going from 10 trucks to 20 trucks, that's meaningful to them, or 100 to 120.
Yes.
But when you get to a scale of where you're at and your other public competitors, no one talks about the number of trucks. In fact, I don't even think anyone cares.
No, you don't.
It's all about the operating performance of the business.
Absolutely. How do I make money? How do I make money? I don't care what it is. And so our thing is that we will always be in transportation, but we are looking at a lot of different, we want niches.
Yeah.
We want niches, we want specialized type of businesses, and we want hard business. That's what we want, because most of the time if you have that, you can make an acceptable return.
The riches are in the niches, as they say.
The riches are in the niches. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I don't know, to answer your question, I don't know that I want to say everything comes around, right? I mean, everything, it does and it changes. The next thing you know, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, OTR is leading the way and everybody wants to be a regionalized. Remember, that's what that was. Everybody's got to be a regionalized. I remember when I was doing the expedited side, I'm going to tell you, railroad's taking over. Railroad's going to take over, and they got their share. They got their share, but they didn't get 900 teams share. They didn't take.
They got that solo.
They got
over
the
road.
solo over the road, which it should have gone there.
Yeah, for sure.
And but everybody wanted to be a regional OTR carrier at that time, and so everybody flocks there, and then we dilute it. And
It seems like everybody sort of follows. There's a winner of the moment, or there's a sort of a trend. I mean, Knight sort of was the original super regional carrier. Heartland was also at one point highly profitable.
Yeah.
It's interesting when I think back to the 90s, and I think about Covenant, U Express, CRST, Transport America, CFI, and Celadon.
Yeah.
All long-haul carriers, and they were among the most profitable. And then the whole industry changed from a combination of brokerage and the owner-operator market, small carriers, and the rail intermodal business completely killed that entire business.
It did. It did. You're exactly correct. It took it to, because at the end of the day, freight's going to go the way freight has got to go. It's going to go. It's going to find its home. And so we've always got to be open. Our eyes are got to be open. Our ears are got to be open. We got to be listening to our customers that are telling us where it's going, but we try to fight that because it don't fit my model.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, eventually it's going to fit your model. And so you got to be very open to it.
One of the things, you guys were a founder of Transplace, one of the founding carriers of Transplace. That didn't work out. Any observations from those learnings?
Oh yeah. Transplace 2000, and it's one of those deals that 5 of the large companies came together. We put our brokerages together. A side note, I think J.B. Hunt and us gave more than anybody gave, and I love everybody. I love them all. And then we got percentages of the ownership, and I'll never forget. It was Transplace was a struggle, and because you can relate to this, Craig, because your mind thinks like this. But the IT side of it was just, we were having to generate new platforms every year. Yeah. Well, think about how you depreciate that stuff. So we're sitting there just saying, you might be showing losses, but when are we going to get cash flow positive? Mm-hmm. And it took us about 3 or 4 years. And at that time, a lot of the 5 guys, a lot of the 5 companies wanted to sell. They were tired because we were putting money into Transplace every quarter, every 6 months, every year, putting money into it. And I never forget calling a couple of the big guys, and I said, time out. What are we doing? Why are we selling this company for? And it's just got to black. It just got to cash flow positive, and we're selling the company. But I voted no. Everybody else voted yes. I think me and Max voted no.
Yeah, I think you guys were, I think, the smallest.
We owned 13%, 13%.
You were right, by the way, because that business sold 10 years later for $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
It was.
I called a couple of my buddies and said, you know what they sold for? But hey, we sold our 13%, and we had to take a charge of $40 or $50 million. And okay, hey, that also tells you why. If you're going to go in business with somebody needs to be 51%.
Yeah. Well, I think what I had always understood was you had 5 of the biggest, at 1.6, because MS Carriers was in there,
and them
of the 6 biggest truckload carriers, all competing. Lots of ego in the room when you get 6 very successful CEOs of competitors, and just trying to get a consensus. And then you had a private company that was also, there was some private equity behind it.
Yes.
Trying to get anyone to agree on anything was.
We had the board was great. There really was. It was, me and Wayne Garrison and Jerry Moyes and before Swift bought Max.
They're the godfathers.
Some great guys, but everybody's definitely got an opinion. But but the early on, the board meetings, whatever the vote was, is the way we went. Everybody would voice their opinions very strongly, and then you take a vote, and okay, it's 3-2, so we'll go on to the next one. So there wasn't much. It was okay. It worked out well. We just gave up the ghost on Transplace too early.
Yeah, it's interesting how these trends can change. Another business that you exited is the Mexican truck operation.
Yeah.
You and a bunch of other U.S. carriers 5 years ago decided you didn't want to be in Mexico. Do you looking back at that with everything happening with trade and the cross-border, was that a decision that you regret? Is it something that you think was the right decision?
Yeah, we just couldn't figure it out. I mean, we're good at what we do. That's another thing. Be good at what you know. And you get into stuff that it didn't make sense, and we were just having losses and losses and losses, and we could never get it. We had more coming out of Mexico than I had going into Mexico. Next thing you know, I'm deadheading from Dallas to Laredo all the time, 5-10 times a day to try to get that, and then the rates on the inbound were pathetic. And for us, there's some great Mexican folks. We were stupid at it, and so we said we need to get out of it. So I don't regret it at all. And it may come back very strong. And if it ever gets balanced, it's got to get balanced. Laredo to me is too far of a distance. What is it, Houston and Dallas? When you got to feed it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Texas is a big state. I went to Baylor, and I'm driving across I-20, and you get right past the Louisiana line. There's a sign when you get into Texas, because Texas is very proud of their state, and it's the only state that puts the shape on everything. They're very proud of it.
On the interstate.
But when you're driving across the I-20, there's a sign that says El Paso, 792 miles. You're like, I'm going to be here for a long time.
It's going to be a long time to get there. So when it does get in balance, it's difficult to recover. And so that's the reason why we got out of Mexico and just got back to our roots of what we do.
So in terms of general market, you've talked about your reorientation. Where are you bullish in terms of the next 5 years in trucking? Just what does this market look like 5 years from now?
Yeah. I think for us, the 4 verticals that we're in, we're just going to continue to expand it. I think that those are niches that we like, and I think that they are niches that are protected. I think, you take our expedited side, I believe intermodal has done what intermodal is going to do, and have taken whatever solo freight, long haul that there is, and it's going to go there. And as long as the consumer is saying, I want to buy something e-commerce and I want it tomorrow, we're going to be a part of that, because it's the only way that it's going to go on the long distance. And so I feel like that is an area that's very well protected. I think the dedicated side of our business, but other people's business, I think the dedicated is the closest that a customer comes to owning their own fleet. And they treat you like that. And their dedicated trucks are going to get first priority. Their dedicated trucks almost become part of them. Sometimes you wear their own uniforms with the customer. So it's a deeper relationship than others, than just OTR. The warehousing is a great business. It's more like a coupon. You're not going to ever operate it at 20% margins, but you can operate it at 10% margins, 8 or 10% margins. And, we tie the warehouse into the contract. So it's not like I'm going out and own a bunch of warehouses and I'm on the books for a bunch of warehouses. We go lease warehouses with the customer. And then we manage the inside the walls for them.
It's mailbox money.
It's mailbox money. So we do a great job, and it's a coupon, so that's good. And then, to me, the brokerage will be the up and down player, and I think it will always be there. So to answer your question, in 5 years from now, I think freight environment will be same as it is today, as long as the consumer is driving the process and wanting it. I think that LTL is going to be it will continue to grow, because again, the consumer wants it, so therefore they want to get it closer to every consumer. So there's going to be more LTL that is going to be there for the LTL folks, and we provide the service to the LTL folks. So I'm happy with that. I don't feel like I need to go out and buy an LTL company. So I do. I think it'll be similar to the same.
American reindustrialization, the idea of bringing back manufacturing has been a sort of core tenet of Donald Trump's policies. It's generally happened on both sides of the political spectrum, but certainly Donald Trump has made that a core tenet. How are you thinking about, what are your customers saying about what trade policy looks like, what manufacturing reinvestment looks like?
I would say a couple of things. Number one, the flavor yesterday at Wall Street among Wall Street itself, shareholders, and the carriers that were there, and it's a very well attended conference. They are thrilled with the election because I think besides putting doubt or it's over with and now we know and we'll go forward, but they do see the policies. It's like this administration on trucking policies. They're a lot better than the Biden administration. And so I know that the trucking industry is going to be in much better shape from regulations. I think that they will tamper down EPA. And what I mean by tamper down EPA, it's not that I don't believe it ought to be then and let's get the clean air. I believe in all that stuff. But I also believe that it needs to be realistic. And that is, we're not going to be there in 2030. I mean, y'all came out with this thing that, we're going to be there and we're going to have all electric engines in 2030. And no, you're not. I mean, quit playing the game because it ain't going to happen. Can it happen in 2040? Maybe. But it's not happening in 2030. So don't act like it is. So we're not going to be pushing stupid decisions. And so I think that the industrial side is going to be better. Now, the thing that I'm wondering is that on the tariffs, if the tariffs happen, or how much the tariffs are, no nation in the world is going to give up on America. 340, 50 million people that buy stuff. More than anywhere in the world, they buy stuff. They're not going to give up. If he was to put X amount % of tariff, they're going to figure a way to continue to send it over to America. I think it was evident by the last 4 years that he had is that whatever tariffs he put on, inflation was the lowest ever. Inflation was nothing. So the tariffs are not going to blow up inflation because the other side of the tariffs is the, quote, drill, baby, drill. Let me tell you, there is a lot of deflation in fuel, a lot of deflation in oil because it's in everything that we make. Everything you got in your hand, your pocket, what we're wearing has got oil in it. And so that is going to be advantageous for reduction in pricing. And the only thing I don't know is that if they get too high on tariffs, does it change traffic patterns any?
Yeah.
That's what I don't know. I mean, we're big on the West Coast. If they put 60, 80% tariffs on China, is it going to slow down the inbound to the West Coast ports? So I don't know that.
Does that shift it to Mexico? I-35 back to what we talked about. But
does,
then you got the problem.
Then I've got a problem.
You've got more outbound out of Mexico, just exponentially more than you do.
That's right.
That problem becomes even
That's
bigger.
right. Yeah, and then all your inbound into California. Well, I don't want to go to California. You don't make nothing. It's either imports or lettuce.
Yeah, yeah. And you might get a letter from CARB if you.
That's right. You get a letter from CARB to say quit hauling it. So anyway, it'll be interesting. That's the only concern that I've got that I got to figure out. We got to figure out what happens with the tariffs and how it changes the freight patterns.
The electric vehicles. I know Matt, big champion of all the different technologies out there. He's certainly Elon Musk's biggest fan that I know.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about electrification? You said not getting to net zero in 2030, but
yeah, let me tell you. Here's what I can tell you, is that the last administration that was pushing electric vehicles until the American people said, "I don't want it. I don't want this stuff right now," and would not buy it. A certain niche. I mean, Tesla's got it. I mean, they're the inventor of it. And they got their niches and those kind of things, and that's fine. But the biggest thing that they could do that would eliminate a lot of it is renewable fuels. I mean, that's the biggest thing that could ever happen to, I mean, if they want to spend a lot of money, go out and build plants for renewable fuel because it is, Matt, 20% of the cost and 80% of fixing the problem. is renewable fuels.
You're
Fix
talking
that.
hydrogen specifically or other fuels?
No, it's other fuels.
What are you bullish on?
What are you bullish on, Matt?
Renewable diesel.
Hey, he's a hero.
He's the expert.
He's my expert.
Chattanooga, this is an important venue for
Oh, yeah. It's so thrilling.
to have F3 here, but also Chattanooga has been an important part of the history of Covenant. Covenant's been an important part of a part of Chattanooga's history. Why do you think Chattanooga punches well above its weight in the freight business?
I think it's a couple of things. I think Chattanooga was just very fortunate from a transportation logistics deal because of your grandfather, my stepfather, Clyde Fuller, just because he lived here, right? It's the only reason why Covenant's here. It's the only reason why U.S. Express is here. And then I would say another one would be Ted Alling and what he did at Access America. I think that those three are 90% of the roots of what's going on in logistics in Chattanooga, Tennessee, because the vast majority of the people, which is great and wonderful and entrepreneurial and all that good stuff, but the vast majority of logistics in Chattanooga work for one of those three. Somewhere. Yeah.
The coaching tree.
The coaching tree.
Of going out and starting all of the companies. And I think if you went, I think there's 60 companies that do more than 10 million in logistics based here. At one point we counted it.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look at middle management or those founders, they worked either at Covenant, U.S. Express, maybe Kenco.
Yeah, Kenco's another one. Absolutely.
Or Access America.
I agree.
Or they were the derivative of Access America.
Yep. Yeah, that's what has happened to Chattanooga. And so that's a blessing because Chattanooga, per capita, is what, right there with Chicago?
Well, I think per capita, Chicago's a much bigger city, but per capita, we certainly have more folks and dedicated to logistics than we do, than Chicago does.
Yeah. So,
I think one of the interesting things that I've talked to folks in the room, there's actually a number of founders, and we always wanted this. Ellis is in the room for the mayor's office, but one of the interesting things, I've talked to a number of founders that are actually moving to Chattanooga, and we always thought that was going to happen. If we hosted an event here, we would get folks to come here, but I think one of the things that I've heard from folks in the audience is, one of the nice things is you can walk downtown and inevitably you're going to run into people in the industry. If you go to Chicago, it's a huge city.
Yeah.
Those businesses are all over the Chicago metroplex.
Yes, it's close knit.
Whereas here, there's such a high concentration of people in this community.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a great format.
So David, closing thoughts on sort of your bold prediction for the future, for whether it's Covenant or for the industry.
I think that short term, I think that peak is, I'm happy, peak, we're 1 week into peak. Because keep in mind, peak season, we get all the forecasts from our customers. And the last 2 or 3 years, they have missed those forecasts 40 to 80%. And think about the infrastructure we got to do to get ready for their forecast. There's a lot of it. Last week started the first week of peak that will go until about Christmas. And they shot peak was about 105% last week. And this week, peak is growing even more. And so I'm hoping that, so we're watching that. But I think that peak's going to be a good peak. And I think for the first time in about 3 or 4 years. I think then after that, we will go into January and February, weather, slow down. I think that March we'll start seeing a nice turn in freight. And my belief is that somewhere in that, by June, July, August, somewhere in the middle of summer, I think that the policies that the Trump administration will put in and what it does on people's enthusiasm will grow. And I think that there is going to be a lot of freight come summer.
You said something to me backstage before we came out here, is that right after the election, the general census in freight and a lot of the shippers is they're starting to just move orders.
Yes. Yeah. We have seen that with our customers that are starting to come off the sidelines and starting to get more proactive. And we're seeing that I was talking to a guy last night, and he owns a little company, runs like 6-7 manufacturing trucks. It's not in trucking, but They've doubled in the last week. They've literally doubled. His
Double the fleet
orders,
size?
the orders have,
Wow.
his orders have doubled since the election.
Insane.
And he's getting ready to buy 3 more pickup trucks to handle the orders. Now, this is a small company, but it's a representation of it. I got a trainer. This is interesting. I got a trainer. We got 28 seconds. I got a trainer. And my trainer has told me he's 29 years old. And the trainer said 3 months ago, he says, David, I've lost 2 or 3 customers because they're trying to pay for their children and they're not coming to training, training with me. He came up to me about 48 hours, 2 or 3 days ago. And he says, David, since the election, 5 people have came on. There is a representation that's happening all over the country. There's a lot of freight in that.
I agree.
And
I
I'm
think the
gonna haul it.
anxiety of not knowing,
I know.
just either a contested election or just sort of the same, I think created a lot of anxiety in businesses.
Yes.
So, and I hear that quite a bit.
Yeah.
David, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for opening up today, this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you, man. Thank you.